coding school, so we're a tech education provider for adults. We have the school where we're training people, but we also have a career center with guidance counselors where we're helping people find new careers. A bit more about that later. I'd like to get to what the presentation is about, which is career paths in the tech. Oh, sorry, I should also mention we are in Ireland, but we also now have schools in Lithuania, Latvia, and Prague. So we have 7,000 graduates across Europe. So we have an established model that we've been working through. But now to the presentation. So I was going to be discussing career paths in the tech sector. So I know when people are thinking about a career change, because we speak to them every day, they're always saying, well, where do I start? What are the roles? What exactly do tech workers do? So I just thought I'd break that down in a very basic way in this presentation for people who might be wondering about that or trying to do their own research and wondering where they might begin as a beginner to move in to work in tech. So I sometimes speak to people and they say, look, I want to work in IT, I want to work in tech. And I always say, well, that's a bit like saying, I want to play sport. But you then have to break it down, which sport do you want to play? And of course, different people are more suited to certain sports than others. And it's about finding which sport is best for you, as in which tech job might be best for you. And also your personality type might come into it. You know, are you analytical? Do you like working with numbers? Do you like solving problems? Maybe you're more creative or artistic. You're drawn to creating things, building things, or even designing things. Or are you inquisitive? So different personality types can sometimes be drawn to different roles. And of course, if you're enjoying doing something, you'll be better at it than if you're just doing it for the wrong reasons. Some people sometimes talk to us saying, well, which one pays the most? Or which one has the most jobs at the moment? And I always say, well, if you're motivated to do it, you'll find your way through it. You know, there are opportunities in pretty much all of the areas in tech right now, luckily, especially in Ireland. So I was going to maybe start off by looking at how are tech companies organized, particularly on the technology side. And by maybe looking at that, we can start understanding what the jobs are that are being done in these tech companies. So obviously they have sales, marketing, customer success. So there may be the non-technical roles. I won't be speaking about those today, but I was just putting them there because they are relevant. And sometimes actually certain companies want to hire salespeople or marketing people who have a bit of a tech background. I know that we have partners in, for instance, the cybersecurity space who are interested in talking to people who've done a cybersecurity course about working in sales in cybersecurity. So sometimes that can be a route in as well, but their roles I won't really be addressing today. Sort of your general entry-level position in a tech company is IT and customer support. So just to be aware of those, and sometimes they can be good roles as well. I know that even some of the large consultancies provide those kinds of services, so that can be a route in. But today I'm going to look at really the core functions within a tech company and break down what they do. And I'm going to look at these departments. UX, UI design, which stands for user experience, user interface design. Don't worry if you don't understand what that means. I'm going to break it down in very simple language in a moment. Also web development, software engineering. Then you have quality assurance and testing, data analytics, and cybersecurity. Now, these departments actually all interact with each other in a way. So if you imagine a product being built, funneling through these departments, the designers are designing it, the web developers are building it, the quality assurance testing, that's testing things for bugs, they're testing it. You know, when a computer game, say, gets released and within half an hour, everyone's found all the bugs, well, that would be the tester's fault, I suppose. Data analytics are analyzing the data, the customer interactions, and of course, cybersecurity are protecting these assets. Now, I'm going to break this down with a few examples so we understand it a bit better. And actually, I was going to use an analogy. So if you imagine the construction industry, you know, building houses, buildings, all of the cranes you probably see if you look out around Dublin. So if you imagine the UX designers are a bit like the architects. They're planning these things, they're designing them. They then pass those plans over to the web developers, who are your builders, if you like, and they're actually building these websites, apps, products. The software testers are a bit like the structural engineers. So they need to go in and make sure, is this thing safe? Will it stand up? Do the plans match that? The data analysts would be the quantity surveyors, so they're crunching the numbers. And then cybersecurity are your security guards, making sure no one's getting in on site and sabotaging stuff. So generally in construction terms, that's generally what those roles are, but we'll look at it now in a bit more detail. So if we look at maybe a website we all know, the Amazon website, I know I certainly use it the couple of weeks before Christmas. Now, that is one of the busiest websites in the world. And you probably notice it constantly changes its design, its look, its feel. Even the logo changed recently, didn't it, to a smile? You know, that didn't happen by accident. There would have been a lot of thought gone into that. And we'll get to how they would have done that. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pretend that the Amazon website is a product, funneling through all of these job functions to show you how it works. So A, it needed to be designed. Then once it was designed, it needed to be built. After it was built, they wouldn't just release that and let everyone log on to it straight away. They needed to test it to make sure everything's working and there were no bugs and all of that. Then, of course, once they've released it and Joe Public, me, you, and everybody else is logging on, getting their Christmas presents, they need to analyze what the results are happening, how many sales are being made, all of the data that this website's generating. They need people to analyze that data. And then, of course, they need to protect it, because you put your credit card details into the Amazon website. They need to make sure that they're secure. They're not being hacked. They're not being stolen by bad actors and taken away. So if you look here, the UX UI designer, they're the ones designing it. And we'll get into how they do it in a moment. The web developers are the ones then building it once they get those designs. And then the software testers, they're then testing it for bugs, fixes, and all of that before it's released. If there's any problems, they would pass it back to the web developer to fix them. And if it's a design issue, the web developer might pass it back to the designer and gets passed back and forth. And then when it goes live, your data analysts are analyzing all of the data and making business decisions based on that. And of course, your cybersecurity executives are protecting it, protecting the data, protecting all of the credit card information, etc., logins, addresses, basically everything that they need to protect. Another example, maybe a bit closer to home, in the banking sector, I was going to look at maybe Bank of Ireland briefly. So if you think of how did you used to communicate with your bank? Well, I remember in the sort of 80s, 90s, banks didn't really have websites. They might have a phone number, but you'd be lucky if anyone answered. And they also closed at lunchtime, just shut their doors and locked them. And then they would also maybe close at 4 or 5 o'clock, shut the doors and lock them. So really not very customer friendly, very difficult to get in there at the right time. And it was all tellers sitting there. You'd have to get a physical meeting with someone and probably queuing for quite a while. Nowadays, you have an app, you have a website. It's 24 hours a day. You can actually be managing your own account. Of course, you can still go in and queue up if you want, but everything's really changed. It's now a digital enterprise. And of course, the banks now hire all of these technology functions that I just spoke about, and they're all new jobs in that sector. In fact, the UX UI designer who did the Bank of Ireland app is one of our lecturers, and he leads the UX UI design course. And we also have 2 senior data analysts from Bank of Ireland teaching on our data analytics course. So the banks have become high tech, and there are high tech jobs available in them. So if you look at the past, I mean, this is one of the first banks in the world, Wells Fargo in the Wild West, which, you know, what do you think was on these guys' CVs to get the job? I'd imagine it was, can you count? Are you handy with a gun if you're going to be posted out, maybe out in New Mexico or somewhere, and all of that. So very different job profile. Of course, nowadays, as I mentioned, they're looking for data analytics, cybersecurity. It's all apps, algorithms. So let's have a quick look at the Bank of Ireland app. So this is what you see when you open it up. So anyone who's at Bank of Ireland will know this view very well. Now, what's it showing here? It wants us to put in our PIN, which is a 6-digit number. Now, who do you think decided to put that there? Well, you see, it would have been the cybersecurity team. They would have said, look, this is the type of security we want. This is what we need to achieve. But they would have told the design team, this is what we want. And then the user experience and user interface, which is what we're looking at here, this is an interface, design team would have said, look, this is the design we've come up with. This is how we're going to show that to people. They would have then given that to the web development team who would build this. And then, of course, the testing team would test it. And then when it's released, the data analytics team, which is really huge in Bank of Ireland, would be analyzing all of the data that's being generated by this app as we interact with it. You know, who's transferring what, where, how many customers are actually logging in versus this. Many questions they can ask to analyze the data. And of course, as I mentioned, the cybersecurity team, they're not just putting on the idea for the login and the security there, they're also trying to keep hackers out, and they're doing all sorts of jobs to do that. So as I mentioned, with the Bank of Ireland app, just to reiterate the point, needs to be designed, needs to be built, tested, results need to be analyzed, and needs to be protected. And these are the departments that are doing all of those jobs. And these are real jobs that are in Bank of Ireland right now that you could train and apply for, and AIB and various other companies. I'm just using the bank as an example. So let's just quickly look into each one briefly. So what does a UX UI designer actually do? So this is actually probably the least technical role out of all of these tech jobs. It's not a coding job. It's more of a design job. They do use different tools to create images and designs, which you can look up. There's various, I'm not going to start naming all the brands here because I'm not advertising them, but, and also there's a lot here of user research. So these designers would do a lot of surveys, research with users to find out how people are interacting with websites so they can design them better. And they use a method called design thinking, which is starting with the problem and working your way back, as opposed to designing something and trying to work your way towards a problem. So if you were creative minded, interested in design, and empathetic to people's, to other people, how they interact with things and how they feel, then this might be the one to choose. It's a very, it is probably the most creative of the roles. We then move on to web development, which is a very funky job, of course. And that, of course, is also a creative job, but it's more in the trenches with coding. So you're building things, you're creating them. You're using coding languages here, like JS stands for JavaScript, which is the coding language which makes websites dynamic. You can quickly go through these just to demystify them. HTML, they are the building blocks of a website. CSS is a way of decorating a website with colors and images. And JavaScript is what makes it dynamic. So when you click on the Amazon, say, book now or add to cart, JavaScript tells the website, someone's adding something to the cart. We better put the number 1 in the cart. We now need to update this. So it tells the website what to do next. So every time you press a button, JavaScript is the one making the website update and move with what you're telling it to do. So that's just a bit on the web developers. So if you're a creative person or interested in building things, then maybe web development would be the one for you to look into. Testing and quality assurance. So this is all about writing code to test websites, to make sure there are no bugs. And what you're doing is really making sure everything is of a high quality. The department can sometimes be called the QA department, which just stands for quality assurance. There are 2 types of testers. There's manual testing, and that's where you write one bit of code to test a particular thing and you get the result. Or automation testing, where you would maybe write a program that would run away and test 1,000 things for you and come back and tell you the results, but you don't have to do it all manually. Sometimes these testers are writing long codes and having assets or websites tested overnight, and they come back in the morning and find everything. So if you were inquisitive, thorough, maybe you wanted to be a detective in another life, this might be one of the roles for you. And actually, not a lot of people target testing or quality assurance as a career first. Most people are drawn to maybe the data or the web. So there can be opportunities and a real career path in quality assurance. It might not be as competitive, say, as web development. Just a little tip there. So data analytics, this really is a good role. I'm going to talk a little bit in a moment about the skills gap, and I use data analytics as the example, but there are a lot of jobs coming out in data analytics. You'd be hard pressed now to name a company that doesn't analyze data or have an online presence in some way. So all of these companies need to analyze their data, and they need people to do that. So what do data analysts do? Well, they solve business problems by looking at data, but technically what they do is they're extracting data from a database using a system called SQL or SQL. And that's a program that can extract data from various databases. They're then turning that data into images. So if you ever watch the news and they show you a graph, or in the paper, some graphs or a pie chart, well, a data analyst would have pulled that data from somewhere and turned it into that image using a program, Tableau or Power BI. And the coding language favored by data analysts is Python, which is actually named after Python's flying circus, if you believe it or not. So that's what a data analysts do. An example of SQL pulling from different databases would be in Bank of Ireland. I know I had a conversation with their data analysts, and he had to work out what was the top performing ATM in the country. So he was pulling data from all of these cash machines around Ireland and finding out which were depleting cash more quickly, on what days was it, Where did they have to have cash around the country to refill them, of course, and also, which ones didn't need refilling and all of that. So that's what data analysts do. I'll just move on to cybersecurity. So this one, again, it's protecting data and it's making sure that hackers aren't getting in. So what cybersecurity professionals do is a thing called ethical hacking, where they'll try to hack into their own website to try and simulate a hacker going in to try and find out where the vulnerabilities are. They'll also do penetration testing, which is where they're looking for where are the vulnerabilities in their own systems, and also cryptography comes into it. So again, if a bit like testing, if you wanted to be a secret agent or a bit of the James Bond about you, or wanted to be a detective, it's an interesting one to be in. But jokes aside, there's a real career here. And for mid-level to senior cybersecurity professionals, there is a headhunting war going on between companies. There are not enough cybersecurity professionals in the market to fill all of the roles. So if you can get into cybersecurity, even at the bottom, and work for 2 to 3 years and get that experience, you'll absolutely have a great career ahead of you, because there'll be companies fighting over you. The real trick in cybersecurity is getting that first start in. But once you are, there's a great career path there, and it's only going to grow, because I don't see cybersecurity going away. I mean, I don't think the bad guys are going to stop hacking anytime soon. So there'll be a need for good guys and ladies out there. So which one are you drawn to? So if you're watching this thinking, I wanted to work in IT, you sort of need to maybe have a think, maybe go online and look at some videos about the different areas. I know on our website, Dublin Coding School YouTube channel, we have interviews with all of the lecturers telling you what it's like to do their job. So it might be a good idea to think, which one am I more naturally drawn to? Which one am I interested in? And this is if you were starting out. Once you've done that, what you should do is start learning some basic skills. So start at the beginning. Don't be overawed. Don't be overwhelmed by it, because there is a lot to learn. I mean, I was talking to one of our web development lecturers a few weeks ago, and he basically said he's still learning. You'd never stop learning in these areas, because new technology is coming out all the time. Stuff is always coming out. So you should go with the view saying, I'm going to learn the basics, but I'm going to keep learning throughout my career. I'll never stop learning, because even the very top web developer in the world won't know everything. They can't know everything. They're always trying to learn new things. So don't be overwhelmed by it. It's part of the job. So just learn the basics at the start at the beginning. Also build a technical portfolio. And this can be done for any of the roles I've talked about, not just the creative ones. Obviously, UX designers, you want to have 2 or 3 designs you've done that really show what you can do once you've learned the basic skills. Web developers, you want to show websites, apps you've built. But also testers, you can show, I tested this and I found this. You can have a technical portfolio where you've demonstrated what you've done. Also data analysts, you can say, look, here's a business problem I solved. And there's lots of data sets out there where you can do kind of dummy campaigns and you can show them that this is how I solved this problem using this data. And of course, cybersecurity as well. You can perform case studies and have a portfolio where you've done assessments of various companies and their assets. So you can build a technical portfolio for all of these jobs. And of course, it can be attached to your CV to show your competence. You also then, once you've done those things, start preparing for technical interviews. And that's really, they are different than other interviews where they're asking technical questions about the role. They might even ask you to do a technical test using some of the skills. So you probably want to have a look around too, sometimes on the jobs boards of what kind of technologies they're looking for in these areas, because they'll be the ones they'll test you on, and just make sure you've got that covered. And then build a network and reach out. Now, this is just some advice from me, actually. I think this is a good idea, that if you're going into a new area, you should try and build a network in that area. So you're not so much reaching out to people saying, hey, have you got a job for me? But what you're doing is, let's, for instance, say it's in web development. You might look on LinkedIn, the online platform, and say, look, there's 20 senior web developers that I found working in Ireland, in Dublin, or wherever in Galway, Cork. I'm going to send 20 messages out. And what you say is, hi, my name is whatever it is. I'm starting out in web development. I'm really interested to get involved in it. I've done a course, or I'm about to. I'd really like your advice into how you got started in the industry, and just to hear your thoughts and advice to me starting out as a web developer. Would you be open to having a quick call or a coffee or something like that? They'd want to be pretty mean not to say no. Now, not everyone's going to get back to you, but imagine 5 to 6 of them do. Then you've made 5 or 6 really good contacts. They've given you advice, and you never know when this can pay off. Maybe in 5 years, you're working away and one of them contacts you saying, hey, the new web development roles come up in this company and I thought of you because I remember I had that conversation with you and you were looking around. How are you getting on now? And suddenly you can be in there. So just constantly building a network in a new area. I think it's a good idea to be doing. You know, sometimes when you're doing this, you can feel, why am I doing this? I'm not getting much out of it. But it really can pay off in the future if you're really serious about working in one of these areas. Because what you'll find is, if you get into being a web developer, cybersecurity person, UX designer in Ireland, you'll find it's actually a smaller community than you think when you get up to a mid-level, senior level. So building that network early will be only a benefit to you in your career. Now, let's look at the skills gap. So this is really about the opportunity. Are there jobs in the area? I looked at just data analytics, but this is relevant to all of the areas I was talking about. So some stats here. This is according to IBM, or Big Blue as they're known, major IT firm. They've said that data analytics grew as a job by 28%. This is globally over the last 3 years. And LinkedIn rated as the third biggest growing job on their platform. So this is all really good news for people who want to work in data analytics. But the European Commission have estimated 484,000 unfilled positions in data analytics by 2025. So what's that about? And in Ireland also, they're predicting a shortfall by 146,000 people with computer skills by 2022. That's this year. So I suppose that prediction, we'll probably have to keep an eye on that to see if it's coming true over the summer and by September, and then I'll be probably updating this slide. And they're also, according to Enterprise Ireland, there's 8,000 tech jobs coming on stream annually in Ireland. Now, I would argue it's much more than that. I see them coming in every month and we track it. That must be a bare minimum. There's way more coming in than that. So what this really telling us is there are more jobs being advertised than there are people with the skills to do them. Now, we're not saying there aren't people applying for these jobs. Of course there are. But what we're saying is that people who actually have the skills to do them. So for data analytics, do they know how to use SQL, Tableau, Python, those systems I talked about? Well, there aren't. They're saying there's a gap of that many people who don't have those skills to fill those jobs. Real worry for the businesses, but also it's an opportunity for the workers to say, look, if I upskill myself in these areas, there's a job there. Now, what's causing this? This is just a quick, what causes a skills gap? Just a quick slide here. So if it looks like a piece of DNA here, but it isn't if you watch those crime shows. But if you look at technology, this is time on the bottom and growth on the top. So the blue line would be technology innovation. So new things being invented, you know, artificial intelligence, whatever it might be, different things being invented. And then the blue line is education of the human race in general. So usually when technology moves ahead in the workplace quicker than people are being educated, there becomes a skills gap. It really means companies want to use technologies that there aren't enough workers to be employed to help them use those systems. So if data analytics moves ahead like it has, suddenly we need to train people to be able to do that job. If web development, because web development is much more different now, say, than the 90s, it moves on and on and on. People need to be trained in the new way of doing these things. That's all that means. And once tech moves too far ahead, you end up with a skills gap, which is, I suppose, means social pain and more unemployment or people not getting those jobs. So what's the solution? Well, I would argue, and I have to argue, because I'm here representing a tech education company, but I really actually believe this, that education is the answer here. Learning those skills to fill those jobs. So I'll just talk a little bit about Dublin Coding School. So our courses are practical and hands-on. They are short and intensive, and they're focused on the tech jobs market in Ireland. We won't put a course on unless we see jobs being advertised in that area. We're a vocational school. We're here to train you for the jobs market. It's not a nice to have, it's a must have in the job. They're live and interactive, so they're not online videos that you're watching on YouTube or getting notes. 100% of our classes has a professional lecturer working in a big brand, teaching you live and in person. And it's 50% practical, around 50% theory. Very important to us that all our lecturers are working at brands, and I'll come to that in a moment. And who are we training? So we're a school for adults, so for children, generally not for school leavers, but they can come in, but we're really around the career change. So if you're looking to get into tech, but you don't know where to start, we're the school for beginners and career changers to give you that first step into the tech sector. We've had students coming from so many various backgrounds, from hospitality, construction, etc. So the course topics, the core courses here are data analytics, cybersecurity, web development, testing, UX, really to mirror the jobs that we've just been talking about. But we also then do courses like in Python or IT for managers. And I just have a couple of more slides here. Our lecturers and advisors, as I said, they're all from brands that you probably know, Bank of Ireland, Hewlett Packard, we have the lead designer, we have the data lead from TikTok. And our Career Centre will help you with your CV, your online presence. And then we partner with companies around Ireland where we'll share your CV if your results are good to help you try and find a job and help you prepare for interviews. And these are our partners. We've partnered with One Login, Bradley, Google. We've partnered with their apprenticeship program, which they've okayed our web development course as a sort of a stepping stone to that. And just a quick one, we had Svetlana, who was working in a beauty salon, and she joined our data analytics course last May. And we did very well in the course. We placed her as an intern in Tune Release, who are one of our partners, part of the Trinity College program. And then she got a job as a junior analyst in Accenture, which we prepared her for the interview. So this is the type of career change that we're really proud about. There's other stories like Svetlana you can see on our website. Just to say, if you do any of our courses, you can sit them again for free within a year. We have a safety net. We're the only school that does that. And this is how to contact us. So it's dublincoding.ie. My name's Luke Treacy. I'm the general manager, and you can get me at luke@dublincoding.ie. And of course, we're on we have a very active and brilliant marketing team who have us out there on every social platform. But YouTube's a good one to look at because we have all of our events and interviews there. So if you are looking to research, want to hear a lecturer talk about one of these roles, that's the place to look.